All right, let's take a deep dive, shall we? Into the world of clouds.
Hmm.
You've handed us a whole stack of articles and notes,
Yeah.
and it looks like we're focusing on the Wikipedia entry for clouds.
Hmm.
Our mission today is to become cloud experts
Sounds good.
without having to wade through all those pages and pages of information.
Clouds are so much more than just pretty scenery, though. I mean, they're a vital part of our planet's weather and climate system.
That's a good
And they impact life beyond Earth, too.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly are clouds?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that clouds are actually considered aerosols.
Aerosols.
Yeah, I know it sounds a bit like something out of a science lab, but it
Wow.
just means they're visible masses of tiny particles. And in this case,
Okay.
those particles are water droplets or ice crystals.
So like tiny floating jewels. I always kind of thought of clouds as like fluffy cotton balls.
That's a great way to visualize them. And it's not just here on Earth either. Did you know other planets and moons have clouds too?
I did not.
Yeah. But the catch is, they might be made up of some pretty wild stuff, like methane
Oh, wow.
or sulfuric acid.
Sulfuric acid, yikes. I'd rather stick to our water-based clouds.
Yeah,
But even those come in so many different shapes and sizes.
I do.
How do we even begin to classify them?
It can feel like they have a language of their own, can it?
It really does.
Well, for the clouds we see in the troposphere, that's the layer of the atmosphere closest to Earth.
Right.
We use Latin terms like cumulus and cirrus, and we can actually thank a meteorologist named Luke Howard for that system.
Okay.
Back in the 1800s, he revolutionized the way we think about clouds.
So before him, people were just like, look, a big fluffy thing in the sky.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, even ancient philosophers like Aristotle tried to make sense of clouds.
Right.
He even wrote about them in his work Meteorologica, but it wasn't very systematic. It wasn't until Howard came along that we really had a standardized way to classify them.
It's fascinating to think about how our understanding of something like clouds has evolved over time.
Oh, for sure.
Speaking of fascinating, I read somewhere that the poet Goethe was so inspired by Howard's work that he dedicated poems to him
Wow.
about clouds.
That's a dedicated fan.
Talk about taking your appreciation to the next level.
Yeah.
But back to the science. So these Latin names,
Yes.
are they based on a layered system?
They are. It's a system of genera, species, and varieties, kind of like a family tree for clouds, with genera as the basic shapes, species adding some more specific features, and
Yeah.
varieties giving us even more detail.
So it's all about breaking down those fluffy shapes into specific categories. What about clouds way up high,
Yeah.
like in the stratosphere and mesosphere? Do those get fancy Latin names too?
Those higher altitude clouds are a bit more mysterious, I guess you could say. They're
Yeah.
much rarer.
Okay.
And we usually just use common descriptive names for them. Things like nacreous clouds, which look iridescent, or noctilucent clouds, which actually glow at night.
Wow, glowing clouds. Okay, I need to see those sometime.
Mhm.
But let's get back to the basics here.
Yeah.
How do clouds actually form? Is it just random?
Not random at all. Imagine a bicycle pump getting warm as you compress the air inside.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually similar to what happens in the atmosphere. When a parcel of air rises, the pressure around it decreases, and that causes it to expand and cool. And that cooling is what's called adiabatic cooling.
So the air is literally getting chilled as it climbs higher.
Exactly. And as it cools,
Right.
it reaches a point where it can no longer hold all of its water vapor. And that point is called the dew point. And that's when the magic happens. The water vapor condenses into those tiny droplets
Wow.
and forms a cloud.
It's amazing to think that something so simple can create these stunning formations that we see in the sky.
It really is. And it's not just about the air cooling either. Adding moisture to the air also plays a role. Think about evaporation from lakes and oceans, or even transpiration from plants. All that water vapor contributes to cloud formation.
So you need that perfect recipe of rising air, cooling, and moisture to make a cloud.
That's the basic idea. And the way the air rises isn't random either. There are three main lifting agents, as meteorologists call them.
Lifting agents.
Yeah. The first is convection, where warm air, like the kind you feel on a hot summer day, rises from the ground. This often creates those puffy cumulus clouds we see.
Makes sense.
Then there's cyclonic or frontal lift, which is caused by weather fronts pushing air upwards.
So weather fronts are literally pushing air up to make clouds.
Exactly. And the third lifting agent is orographic lift. This is where air is forced to rise as it moves over mountains.
Okay.
You can actually see this in action if you've ever watched clouds forming along mountain slopes.
Mountains are like giant cloud factories then. So we have these different lifting agents creating clouds.
Yeah.
And then we need to categorize them,
Yeah.
right? How does that work?
Well, remember those Latin terms we were talking about in the layered classification system?
Uh-huh.
That's where that comes in. Clouds in the troposphere are organized into 3 main levels based on their altitude:
Right.
high, middle, and low. Each level has its own characteristic types of clouds.
Okay, let's start at the top. What are we looking at way up high?
Well, high-level clouds are generally found above 6,000 meters,
Okay.
and they're mostly made of ice crystals. These are those wispy, feathery clouds, like cirrus clouds,
Yeah.
that kind of paint delicate streaks across the sky.
Right.
You also have cirrocumulus, which look like tiny ripples,
I see those.
and cirrostratus, which form thin, sheet-like veils that can sometimes create halos around the sun or moon.
Oh, I love those halos. It's like the sky is putting on a special show.
They are mesmerizing. Now, a bit lower down, between 2,000 and 6,000 meters, you have the mid-level clouds.
Okay.
These are often a mix of water droplets and ice crystals,
Got it.
and they can produce some light precipitation.
So that's where you might see a light drizzle or some snow flurries.
Exactly. This is where you'll find those altocumulus clouds, which
Uh-huh.
appear in patches or sheets and can have a grayish color. And then there's altostratus, which form gray or bluish-gray sheets that can cover the whole sky, making the day feel a bit gloomy.
Right. Okay, so high clouds are icy and wispy. Mid-level clouds are mixed and might bring a little precipitation. What about those low clouds, the ones we're probably the most familiar with?
Well, those low-level clouds hang out below 2,000 meters,
Okay.
and they can vary greatly in size and appearance, and they have the potential for heavier precipitation.
Oh, right.
This is where you find those stratocumulus clouds,
Uh-huh.
those gray or whitish ones that often form in rolls or patches. You've also got stratus clouds, which are those flat gray clouds that can cover the entire sky like a blanket.
So those are the ones that make it feel like it's going to rain all day, even if it doesn't.
Yeah, that's the feeling they give you. And of course, we can't forget about those cumulus clouds, those fluffy white cotton balls that we see on sunny days.
Ah, the classic cumulus cloud.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite, right? But wait, there's more to them than meets the eye, isn't there?
There is. Cumulus clouds actually come in different sizes. You've got the small and flat cumulus humulus.
Okay.
Then there's the slightly larger cumulus mediocris.
Right.
And then you have those towering cumulus congestus, which can reach impressive heights and produce moderate to heavy showers. Those are the ones that can quickly turn a sunny day into a stormy one.
So cumulus clouds can be harmless or they can pack a punch. Now, I'm trying to remember those Latin terms for the different types of cloud structures. There was something about 5 basic shapes.
You're right. Remember we were talking about genera, those basic shapes? There are 5 main ones: stratiform, cumuliform, stratocumuliform, cumulonimbiform, and cirriform.
Right. Stratiform for the flat sheets, cumuliform for the puffy ones, stratocumuliform for like a mix of both.
Exactly. Think of stratocumuliform clouds as the ones that can't decide whether to be flat or puffy.
Right.
So they end up with a bit of both. They often appear in rolls or patches.
Okay, and what about cumulonimbiform? That one sounds a bit ominous.
Those are the real powerhouses of the weather. They're the towering, dramatic clouds with dark bases and often anvil-shaped tops. We're talking thunderstorms, heavy downpours, maybe even hail.
So those are the ones you definitely don't want to get caught under.
Uh-huh.
And lastly, cirriform. Those are the high-altitude, wispy ones, right?
Spot on. Cirriform clouds are made of ice crystals and often have a delicate, feathery appearance. They're the ones that can create those stunning halos we talked about.
Okay, this is starting to make a lot more sense now.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to ask, the Wikipedia article goes even deeper, talking about species and varieties within each cloud genus. Is that getting a bit too specific? Do we really need to know all that?
Well, you don't need to memorize every single one, but knowing a few key examples can make you a true cloud connoisseur. Think of species and varieties as like the fine print of cloud classification. They add more nuance and detail to those basic shapes, and they can tell us even more about what's happening in the atmosphere.
Okay, you've convinced me. Give me some examples then. What are some of the coolest or most unusual cloud species and varieties?
Well, one fascinating species is the lenticular cloud.
Okay.
These are lens-shaped clouds that form over mountains, and they look almost like UFOs hovering in the sky. If you ever see one, you'll know that there's some strong wind shear happening over those peaks.
I've seen pictures of those. They're incredible. What else is there?
Then there's the Castellanus species, which have those turret-like formations indicating instability in the atmosphere. These might be a sign that thunderstorms are brewing.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the mammatus clouds, which have those bubble-like protrusions on their undersides.
Those are the ones that look almost otherworldly, right?
Exactly. And they often form after severe thunderstorms, so they can be a sign that things are calming down.
So each of these specific features tells us something about what's happening in the atmosphere. It's like learning a secret language.
It really is. And it's not just about static shapes either. Clouds are dynamic.
Right.
And they're constantly evolving. The article even talks about mother clouds and how they can change and transform over time, giving rise to other cloud types.
Mother clouds. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Think of it like a cloud family tree. A mother cloud is the original cloud that spawns other types.
Okay.
For example, a spreading cumulus cloud can actually morph into a stratocumulus cloud. We'd then call it stratocumulogenitus.
Wow.
The genitus indicates its origin.
So clouds can literally give birth to other clouds.
That's wow.
And what about mutatis? Is that another type of cloud transformation?
Yes, mutatis is used when a cloud completely changes into a different genus type. It's like a cloud undergoing a complete metamorphosis.
This is making me see clouds in a whole new light. But the Wikipedia article also talks about large-scale cloud patterns, things that you can only really see from high altitudes. What are those all about?
Those patterns are truly awe-inspiring. You have stratocumulus fields, which can cover vast areas and have this honeycomb-like structure.
Oh, wow.
And then there are vortex streets, where rows of clouds form parallel to each other, creating these incredible swirling patterns.
Vortex streets. Those sound like something out of a science fiction movie.
They're quite spectacular,
Ah.
and they highlight how complex and dynamic the atmosphere is and how clouds can reflect those forces on a grand scale.
It makes you realize there's a whole world unfolding above us.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so we've talked about cloud types, formation, classification, even their family dynamics. But where do clouds actually hang out? Are they evenly distributed across the globe?
Not at all. Cloud distribution is influenced by a lot of factors, including latitude, temperature, and the presence of mountains and oceans.
So where are the cloud hotspots? The places where you're almost guaranteed to see a cloudy sky.
Near the equator, there's a high concentration of clouds because of the intertropical convergence zone, a region of rising air and lots of moisture. You also find lots of clouds in the mid-latitudes,
Right.
where weather fronts clash and create these dynamic atmospheric conditions. Think about those classic stormy days.
And what about the cloud deserts, the places where clear skies are the norm?
You'll find fewer clouds near the poles, where it's cold and dry,
Makes sense.
and also in the subtropics, where high-pressure zones tend to suppress cloud formation.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, last cloud mystery you need to solve.
Right.
Why are clouds white? And why are they sometimes gray, sometimes almost black? And then at sunrise and sunset, they can be this whole rainbow of colors.
Yeah.
What's the science behind that?
Well, the color of a cloud all comes down to how light interacts with those water droplets or ice crystals within it.
Hit me with the science.
Okay, think of it this way. Dense clouds with lots of small water droplets reflect most of the sunlight that hits them, and that's why they appear bright white. However, as those droplets grow larger and the cloud becomes thicker, less light can penetrate through. That's when the cloud starts to look darker gray or even black.
So a dark cloud means it's packed full of moisture and about to unleash some rain. Like a giant, fluffy water balloon ready to burst.
That's a great analogy. And those vibrant colors at sunrise and sunset, those happen because the sunlight has to travel through more of the atmosphere at those times.
Right.
And this scatters the shorter wavelengths of light, like blue and green,
Uh,
leaving behind the longer wavelengths like red and orange. And those colors then illuminate the clouds, creating those beautiful hues we see.
okay, one last question before we move on.
Mhm.
Clouds are undeniably pretty, but what is their actual impact on our planet? They're not just for decoration, right?
You're right. They're definitely not just for decoration. Clouds play a crucial role in regulating Earth's climate, but it's a complicated story.
How so?
Well, they have this sort of dual personality. On the one hand, they cool the planet by reflecting sunlight back into space. We call this the albedo effect.
Right.
But on the other hand, they can also trap heat near the surface, acting like a blanket
Oh, wow.
and contributing to the greenhouse effect.
Wait, so they can both cool and warm the planet.
They can?
How do we know which effect is stronger?
That's the million-dollar question, and unfortunately, there isn't a simple answer. It's like trying to solve a giant puzzle where some of the pieces are still missing. The impact of clouds on climate depends on a whole host of factors, including the type of cloud, its altitude, the surrounding atmospheric conditions. It's a complex web of interactions.
Okay, so it's complicated, but what do we know so far? Are there any clues to help us understand how clouds might behave in a warming world?
Well, there are. For instance, we know that low-level clouds, like those stratocumulus clouds we talked about earlier, tend to have a stronger cooling effect because they're thicker and reflect more sunlight back into space.
So more low-level clouds could potentially help to mitigate warming.
In theory, yes. But here's where things get tricky. As the planet warms due to greenhouse gases, it's not entirely clear how cloud patterns will change. Some climate models suggest that we might see an increase in low-level clouds,
What?
which would have a dampening effect on warming. But other models predict the opposite, a decrease in those cooling clouds, which would actually amplify warming.
So we're not really sure if clouds will be our friends or foes in a warming world.
That's the challenge we're facing. This uncertainty around cloud feedback loops is one of the biggest hurdles in climate modeling,
Right.
and scientists are working tirelessly to unravel these mysteries. They're gathering more data, refining models, and trying to get a clearer picture of how clouds will respond to a changing climate.
It sounds like there's still so much we don't know about these seemingly simple formations.
There is. But one thing is certain. Clouds are essential players in the climate system, and their behavior will have a significant impact on the future of our planet. Understanding how they work and how they'll respond to rising temperatures is crucial for making informed decisions about climate action.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on clouds, from their formation and variety
I'm glad to hear that.
to their cultural significance and their crucial role in our climate.
It's amazing how something we often take for granted can hold so much beauty, complexity,
I know.
and even a touch of mystery.
Next time I see a cloud, I'll be looking at it with a whole new level of appreciation and curiosity. I'll be thinking about those tiny water droplets, the forces that brought them together, the stories that humans have told about them for centuries,
Right.
and the role they play in shaping our planet's future.
It's been a pleasure exploring the world of clouds with you. And remember, every time you look up at the sky, you're witnessing a dynamic, ever-changing spectacle that connects us to the history of our planet and the mysteries of the universe.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of clouds. We'll catch you next time for another knowledge adventure. Until then, keep looking up and keep learning. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of clouds.
We sure have covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
from those tiny water droplets forming to the intricate ways we classify those fluffy shapes in the sky.
And we even touched on how clouds can act like a giant thermostat for our planet,
Yeah.
both cooling and warming things up.
It's really amazing how
Ah.
something so seemingly simple
Right.
can have such a profound impact on Earth's climate.
Absolutely. But you promised we would take a trip beyond Earth to see what kind of cloud action is happening out there.
Oh, I did.
I'm ready for some interplanetary weather forecasting.
You got it. So the Wikipedia article mentions clouds on other planets and moons.
Right.
And let me tell you, they're not your typical fluffy white cumulus cloud.
Okay, so let's start with our neighbor Venus.
Okay.
Is it ever a cloudy day there?
Venus is practically shrouded in clouds all the time,
Wow.
but you wouldn't want to get caught in a drizzle there.
Why not? Too hot for rain.
Well, the temperature is definitely scorching,
Yeah.
but the real danger is the rain itself. Their clouds are made of sulfuric acid.
Sulfuric acid rain. Oh, that's intense. What causes that?
Well, Venus has a lot of volcanic activity,
Right.
and those volcanoes spew out sulfur dioxide, which forms those acidic clouds. Imagine an entire planet perpetually shrouded in a haze of acid rain.
But
Pretty wild.
yeah, Venus sounds a bit too intense for me. What about Mars? Any chance of a cloudy day there?
Actually, yes. Mars has water ice clouds similar to what we see on Earth,
Okay.
though they're mostly found near the poles. And get this, they've even observed fog on Mars.
Martian fog. That sounds eerie.
Right.
I wonder if it's as thick and mysterious as it sounds. Okay, what about the gas giants, like Jupiter and Saturn?
Yes.
I mean, they're basically giant balls of gas, right?
Right.
Do they even have clouds?
They sure do.
Yeah.
And they're some of the most impressive clouds in our solar system. Jupiter and Saturn both have multiple layers of clouds.
Really?
Yeah, the outer layer is made of ammonia ice, which gives them that pale, creamy color. Below that,
Okay.
there's a layer of ammonium hydrosulfide clouds.
Ah.
And even deeper down, there are water clouds, just like on Earth.
Water clouds on a gas giant. That's kind of blowing my mind. So there's water way down there
Right.
beneath all that gas and those otherworldly clouds.
It's pretty amazing to think about. And it gets even wilder. On Jupiter, near that famous Great Red Spot, they've observed towering cumulonimbus clouds,
Wow.
similar to the thunderstorm clouds we have here, but on a much grander scale.
So even on a gas giant, you can get a good old-fashioned thunderstorm. I guess weather is universal in a way. What about the other gas giants, Uranus and Neptune?
Yeah.
Are they rocking any cool clouds?
They've got their own cloud game going on, too. They also have layered clouds, but instead of ammonia, theirs are mostly made of methane. And they're much colder and farther out, so those clouds behave differently than the ones on Jupiter and Saturn.
Methane clouds seem to be a popular choice in the outer solar system. I'm sensing a trend here.
Yeah.
Any other planets or moons with standout cloud formations?
Saturn's moon, Titan, is a real standout. It has a thick atmosphere, and guess what its clouds are made of?
Methane. I feel like I'm getting good at this now.
You got it.
Yeah.
Methane is definitely the cloud maker of choice in the outer solar system.
Right.
It's fascinating how the different conditions on different planets can lead to such diverse cloud formations.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what other strange and beautiful clouds might be out there just waiting to be discovered on planets beyond our solar system.
Oh, absolutely. It's exciting to think about. We've only just begun to explore the atmospheres of exoplanets.
Right.
And I have a feeling there are some truly mind-blowing cloud formations out there, unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Okay, so we've traveled from those familiar clouds of Earth
Yeah.
to the exotic clouds of other planets.
We have.
That was quite a journey. But before we wrap up this part,
Yeah.
I'm curious about the cultural side of things.
Okay.
Have clouds played a role in human history and culture beyond just the science?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Clouds have captivated human imagination for centuries.
Oh, yeah.
They've inspired myths, art, literature, religious beliefs, you name it. They're these ever-present, ever-changing shapes in the sky, and it's only natural that humans have woven them into their stories and beliefs.
Yeah, I can see that. Tell me about some of those cultural connections.
Well, for example, in ancient Mesopotamia, the Akkadians believed that clouds were the breaths of the sky goddess, and that rain was milk flowing from them. It's a powerful image that connects the life-giving force of rain with a nurturing feminine deity.
It's a beautiful way to think about rain. Any other examples?
Well, there's the story in the Bible about the Israelites being guided through the desert by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire by night.
Right.
In this case, the cloud represents divine guidance and protection.
So clouds can be seen as messengers from a higher power.
That's one interpretation.
No, I like that interpretation.
And then there's the more lighthearted side of cloud appreciation,
Yeah.
like cloud gazing, which
Oh,
has
wow.
been a popular pastime for centuries.
Yeah.
Who hasn't spent a lazy afternoon lying on the grass, looking up at the clouds, trying to find shapes and patterns?
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
It's such a simple yet enjoyable activity.
Yeah.
Connects us to nature in a way.
Exactly. It taps into our innate human tendency to find patterns and meaning in the world around us,
Right.
even in something as fleeting and ephemeral as clouds.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm starting to realize that clouds are so much more than just those fluffy white things in the sky.
They are.
They're dynamic, complex, influential, and even culturally significant.
That's what I love about science. It always reveals these hidden depths and connections in the world around us. And when we take the time to really understand those connections, it changes the way we see everything.
You're so right.
Yeah.
Now, I know we still have more to cover,
Yeah.
but I'm already looking forward to gazing up at the sky with a whole new level of appreciation. What else do we have in store for our final part of this Cloud Odyssey?
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been floating through the fascinating world of clouds, from their formation to their classification, their cultural significance, and even their counterparts on other planets.
It's been quite a journey,
It has.
and we've really seen how those fluffy shapes in the sky are more than just pretty scenery. They're powerful players in our planet's climate system.
Exactly. And that brings us to a topic that's been on my mind. Clouds and climate change. It's a bit of a hot topic, isn't it? Oh, it is. It's one of the areas where scientists are still working to fully understand those complex interactions and feedback loops.
You mentioned earlier that clouds can both cool and warm the planet. It's like they have this dual nature, right?
Precisely. It all comes down to that delicate balance between the albedo effect, their ability to reflect sunlight back into space and cool things down, and the greenhouse effect, their capacity to trap heat near the surface and warm things up.
So which effect wins? Do clouds ultimately help us or hurt us in the face of climate change?
That's the million-dollar question. And unfortunately, there isn't a simple answer. It's like trying to solve a giant puzzle where some of the pieces are still missing. The impact of clouds on climate depends on a whole host of factors,
Yeah.
including the type of cloud, its altitude, the surrounding atmospheric conditions. It's a complex web of interactions.
Okay, so it's complicated.
Yeah.
But what do we know so far? Are there any clues to help us understand how clouds might behave in a warming world?
There are. For instance, we know that low-level clouds, like those stratocumulus clouds we talked about earlier,
Right.
tend to have a stronger cooling effect because they're thicker and they reflect more sunlight back into space.
So more low-level clouds could potentially help to mitigate warming.
In theory, yes. But here's where things get tricky. As the planet warms due to greenhouse gases, it's not entirely clear how those cloud patterns will change. Some climate models suggest that we might see an increase in low-level clouds,
Okay.
which would have a dampening effect on warming. But other models predict the opposite, a decrease in those cooling clouds, which would actually amplify warming.
So we're not really sure if clouds will be our friends or foes in a warming world.
That's the challenge we're facing. This uncertainty around cloud feedback loops is one of the biggest hurdles in climate modeling, and scientists are working tirelessly to unravel these mysteries. They're gathering more data, refining models, and trying to get a clearer picture of how clouds will respond to a changing climate.
It sounds like there's still so much we don't know about these seemingly simple formations.
There is, but one thing is certain. Clouds are essential players in the climate system,
Absolutely.
and their behavior will have a significant impact on the future of our planet. Understanding how they work and how they'll respond to rising temperatures is crucial for making informed decisions about climate action.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on clouds, from their formation and variety to their cultural significance and their crucial role in our climate.
It's amazing how something we often take for granted can hold so much beauty and complexity
Right.
and even a touch of mystery.
I know. Next time I look up and see a cloud, I'll be looking at it with a whole new level of appreciation and curiosity. I'll be thinking about those tiny water droplets, the forces that brought them together, the stories that humans have told about them for centuries, and the role they play in shaping our planet's future.
It's been a pleasure exploring the world of clouds with you. And remember, every time you look up at the sky, you're witnessing a dynamic, ever-changing spectacle that connects us to the history of our planet and the mysteries of the universe.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of clouds. We'll catch you next time for another knowledge adventure. Until then, keep looking up and keep learning.